Hello, welcome back to the hard surface modeling tutorial, or course if you like, where we are modeling this ship in Maya from scratch. So last we left off, we added some more, I guess, detail if you like to the shape of the bottom of the hull. We pretty much finished off the overall shape. If we go ahead and smooth that, you can see we have this nice flat bit back here, and then it's still got the kind of like bulge in the hull that we want. All we're going to do to finish off this bottom half is we're going to duplicate it, mirror it across so that we have the completed two halves. We're then going to add the back portion here where it connects to the back of the ship. We're also going to add the keel. That's going to be quite simple. We're just going to end up doing a bevel, but we'll get to that in a moment. So first things first, before we go ahead and duplicate this to mirror it, just going to press space on the keyboard a couple times to come to the split 4 view like this. If this doesn't come up for you, simply just press this button here on the left. That will activate the 4 different views. You've got top, front, side, and perspective. We're going to come to the top view. Then we're going to go to vertex selection mode. We're just going to hold down right click, go to vertex. Then we're just going to select all the ones running down the middle of the grid. Now, because of the shape of our ship, this has probably selected some at the back that we don't want. So that would be probably... Actually, you know what? We can keep these, I think, because we probably want these to be aligned as well. So we're going to go ahead and press R on the keyboard to go into scale mode. And we're just going to left click and drag down in the X. What that's going to do is it's just going to flatten and completely perfectly align and straighten those vertices to the X axis. Okay? We're just going to turn off our reference layer as well here. Then we're going to align these vertices to the grid. Now, in order to do that, we're going to hold down X on the keyboard, hold down left click, and then drag on the X translate. And now what that's done is holding down X snaps to the grid, and it just snaps it perfectly to the middle of the grid. And now we're ready to go ahead and duplicate this and mirror it, and it will mirror across perfectly, evenly. So to do that, I'm just going to quickly smooth out these edges. Notice that was a bit of a weird placement for those. Okay, so to do that, we're just going to press Control D on the keyboard, and you can see that's now made a duplicate of our polycube here. We'll come ahead and rename those at some point in the future. Now, to mirror this, you can just simply go into the scale, okay, and we can see that the scale we want to reduce this in is the X. So if we go ahead and put -1 X here, just over in the channel box editor, what that's going to do is it's just going to perfectly duplicate it across to the other side. We're just going to go ahead and then do a modify and freeze transformations just to clear off that scale. And now we've mirrored our two sides of the hull. And then that's the completed bottom half of the ship. You're probably seeing this very, very sharp line going down the middle. Don't worry about that. That's just because the two sides aren't currently merged. And we're going to go ahead and bevel those anyway, so that we have a bit more thickness down here. In fact, we may just move them ourselves. We'll see what we end up doing. Okay, so now that we have this one duplicated to the other side, we're going to go ahead and combine these. To do that, we're just going to come up to Mesh and then Combine. What that will do is it will leave over a few empty groups, so we don't actually need these. But just to clear up the seam, we're going to go to Edit, File, then Optimize Seam Size, and that's just going to remove everything that's unnecessary, and then we'll go ahead and just delete those as well. So you might think that's the end of the story when it comes to this, but no, you can see when we smooth preview, it still has that hard seam down the middle. So what we actually need to do is we need to merge vertices which are close together. So in order to do that, we're going to come up to Edit Mesh, and then we're going to just press Merge. And then by default, your distance threshold might be quite high. It might be something up like 1 like this. And because of how big this model is, it's not really going to make that much of a difference. But if we had lots of details or much higher res mesh, that might cause some problems. So the best thing to do, because we know our vertices are literally sitting on top of each other because we, scaled them down to match the grid, I would just set your distance threshold to as low as possible. So in this case, 0.001. What that's now done, if we go ahead and smooth preview, is you can see it's now combined this so that when we smooth, this is now one mesh. Now that looks a bit ugly, not quite accurate, so we need to do a bit of work to make that look correct. But before we get to that, we're actually going to go ahead and make the back portion of the ship here now. So I'm just going to go ahead and select these two edges, hold down Shift, and then go to Bridge. And then I'm going to select these, and then I'm going to come to mesh and then fill hole. Now this is a triangle, but for now that's okay. And then I am also going to take these two edges, go to extrude by holding down shift, right click, and then extrude edge. By default, it's going to want to go off in any which angle. It's going to be, the pivot point is going to be matched to the edge, right? Then you can adjust the thickness and stuff like that here, but we don't want to do that. We want this to go straight up. So instead of attaching or adjusting any of this, I'm just going to press W on the keyboard to go into the translate mode. And I'm just going to pull up directly in Y, and I'm going to go press R, then scale down in Y, come back to translate, and then I'm going to hold down V to snap to vertices, and then just pull down until that sits just like that. I'm then going to go ahead to edit mesh and then merge again, because otherwise we would have had a few vertices on top of each other here. We're then going to go back to edge select mode, hold down shift, right click, and then bridge. So now we have the back portion of the ship. We're just making sure here that it's relatively flat. A little bit of bending, but that's okay because we want that anyway. But I think for the time being, I'm just going to keep this flat. So I'm going to come to the side and then just pull this back and up, holding down V to get that to snap. Okay, and now we have the full bottom portion of the hull completely fused, and we're ready to put in the bevel in the middle to add the keel, and then start adding more details and building out the top portion of the hull. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and select this edge here to add the keel. We're going to hold down shift, right click, and then go to bevel. We're going to come to the front view, and we're just going to scale that out. We'll just change this to slowest so we have a bit more control. Just right click this. Then we're just going to scale up the fraction just until it kind of meets the shape of, or the thickness here in the reference. And okay, that's that. And what you'll probably notice is that it's kind of messed up the shape of our geometry back here. So don't worry, that's okay, that's not a problem. We're just going to go ahead and fix that ourselves. So we're going to come into vertex selection mode. Just going to drag these down and then angle snap, or snap, sorry. We'll just pull these down like so. And again, just holding down V to snap the vertices. It's an annoying little quirk of Maya, sometimes it can be like this. Just like so. Just bringing that back in line with the shape of the hole in our reference. Just like so. Okay, then we're going to pull these down, again snapping, and then just pull that along until it meets the edge. Then we pull these like so, and then again okay. It's also made some sort of inconsistencies in the shape or the thickness, so to fix that, and you can see here, it's not perfect, annoyingly, but it's okay, we can go ahead and fix that. So we're going to go ahead into face select mode. We're just going to delete these two faces, and we're going to delete this face. Then we're going to go into vertex selection mode again, and just pull that out to match the thickness. We're going to extrude this edge, just select that, shift, right click, extrude edge, and then just pull that out. We're going to go back to vertex selection mode and just make sure that these line up. Like so. And then to get this to attach here, we're going to do shift, right click, merge vertices, then target weld tool like we did earlier. And we're just going to attach that to that. Then back into vertex selection mode, just with translate again, just pull those out so they match the thickness. Then we're simply just going to go into edge select mode again, shift right click, and then bridge. And there you go. So now we have the shape of our keel. If you're wondering why it looks a bit odd, what we can actually do is, if we go into edge select mode and then select all of these just by double clicking on the edge, then press hold down space, go to mesh display, and then harden edge. That's then going to harden the normals, and it's going to give us the actual, you'll be able to see the actual hardness of the keel a little bit better. So that's the actual shape, you know, low poly, with the keel as well. So what we're probably going to do at this point is we're going to start looking at adding some more edge loops. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this actually. If you hold down Control and then delete to get rid of that, the reason being is because if I go into vertex mode, you can see we don't have any there now. Obviously there would have been with the edge, but if I just press delete and then go into vertex mode, well, you can see that it's still left over the vertices. So whenever you're deleting an edge that you want to get rid of completely, make sure you press Control and delete rather than just delete. And that will clean it up quite nicely. Just going to fix this up a little. Okay, there we go, and that's not looking too bad. Pretty good, if I say so myself. Okay, so now that we're happy with that shape, I think what we will do is, to make sure this is nice and even, we could pull some of these edges along, just to make sure we have a bit more even squares. So I'm just pulling those along and then using the multi-cut tool, going in and just adding them in the middle with Control and middle mouse click. So we're not adding them in the length, we're just adding them in the height here. Just pull that along till it's a square, and then again another one in the middle. We will pull this along slightly as well. Okay, if you're wondering how I'm sliding the edges along like this, if you double select an edge, then hold down Control and Shift, what that's going to do is it's going to activate slide mode, and then they will slide evenly along the geometry, rather than if I was just to select this and then move it. You can see it's actually changing the shape of the mesh. That's because it's not sliding along the rest of the geometry. But if we hold down Shift and or Control and Shift, left Control and Shift, and then move it, then it will fit a lot more evenly and actually follow the shape of the mesh. So now that we've added a few more of these loops, I'm just going to go ahead and edit the edge flow on these. If you can't remember how to do that, just double select the edge, hold down Shift, right click, go to Edit Edge Flow, and then we can press G on our keyboard to repeat that action. You can use that for a lot of things, bevels, fill holes, bridge, all that stuff. Okay, we're going to just go back into our blueprint views and just make sure this is all still lining up pretty nicely. May need to pull the front of the ship forward here. I think to do that, I am going to use our lattice like we did in the previous episode. So we're going to go to Deform, then Lattice. I'm just going to remove these extra divisions because we don't need those. Then pull the whole front of the ship forward a bit. Like so. Okay, now that's lining up a bit better, maybe slightly further forward. There we go. Okay, so now that we're at this point, what I like to do is we can add some subdivisions. So in order to do that, all we're going to do is we could add holding edges, bevels to this, so that this remains sharp while we smooth. But what that's going to do is, if we go ahead, you know, if I was just to bevel this, just for the sake of example, right, it's not going all the way around, but just so you get the idea. And if I go ahead and smooth this now, obviously it's going to add extra edges there too, so we don't actually want that. Because we just want, you know, we don't want to add our final bevels yet, we just want a bit of extra geometry that we can like keep this smooth. We're going to go ahead and use the, what's it called? Edge crease tool instead. Now, if you've never used that before, it's a very, very handy tool in Maya, which kind of acts like a bevel, but isn't permanent, it's non-destructive. So if I just select all of those edges, actually we won't need these, we kind of just want these ones here. Then if I go and Shift and go to crease, And then just holding down middle mouse, I'm going to drag to the right, and you can see that's now added a highlighted line here. If I go ahead and smooth preview that, you can see what that's done is it's actually holding that edge. So if I go ahead and smooth this, you can see it is adding our extra divisions, but it's holding that sharp edge, right? Rather than interpolating it with everything else. Now that we've started to take a look at this, I can see that there are a few issues with our model here. So one thing that we need to do is pull these edges up like so with the multi-cut tool. Now to get this to go in a straight line, I'm holding down Control and Shift as well, and then just left clicking to place, because this is going to be our where the rudder sits, right? So this needs to be flat. Everything else can kind of deform around it. Also, for the time being, I think we will actually not smooth this, thinking about it now, just because I think it's probably better to get the rest of the ship in place first, and then make sure everything kind of fits together nicely, and then we can go ahead and add our subdivisions. Okay, so now that we have this part done, that part of the blocking, we're going to make or start making at least the top portion of the hull. So to do that, what I like to do is I'm just going to go ahead and press Control D just to duplicate that. We're going to call this top_hull. I think now's probably a good time to start renaming this part as well, and then we'll call this bottom_hull, just so we can tell which part we're working with. And then with our duplicate, I'm just going to go ahead and select all the edges and then just remove the crease tool because we don't need that from this part. We're going to go back to edge select mode, and I'm going to select every single edge with the exception of these ones at the very back. Okay. The reason being is because we'll actually have that part be a separate part of the model. We just want kind of the side and the front portion of the hull here. So once we have this, what we're going to do is we're going to shift extrude edge. Okay. Press W to bring that back to translate tool because we just want to go straight up, and we're just going to pull up just until we get to the top of the hull. And you can see our curvature here is actually following the shape, right, already, mostly, just because this curve here is very, very similar to this curve here. A lot of people think these ships are actually straight, but they're not. They have a curve to them, right? Same goes for across the top as well. We're now going to go ahead into face select mode, and we're just going to shift, we're going to click and then shift double click to get that entire loop. We're going to go ahead and delete that. We're then going to double click the rest and just delete as well. So that just leaves us with this top portion, which we're going to turn into the top part of our hull. So right now, that's obviously like very much the wrong shape, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and fix that. We will also, I think, just pull down this part because I think that's probably too high. Right, you can see the lines here. We want to be following that curvature. So we're just going to pull these down just so they follow those lines. Just like so. And have that one just go across like that. And then we'll take a look at the back as well and make sure that curvature is the same. So we can see it's following this line. So we just want to bring these down a little bit just to make sure that's staying in line. Any little small change you can make now will make a big difference later on when, you know, it's a lot harder to make these changes. You kind of want to make them now. Okay. I'm pretty happy with that. That seems like it's following the curvature to me. And we kind of want this to be at the top of the deck area because that's where the top portion of our hull is going to be. We can add these extra planks up here that kind of extrude out as details afterwards. Next one we're going to do is we're going to come into the side view and we are going to hold down shift and then go to multi-cut, and then we're just going to add one exactly in the middle. Then what we'll do is we will, I think, select all of the vertices, then, oh actually no, we'll just go into object select mode, and then we'll get our lattice back again. Sorry, not solidify, lattice. Okay, then we're going to put, this time, 3 divisions in, right, because we have that central one. We're then going to select these control points, come back to our front view, and we're just going to scale those in. Now that's probably brought the front a bit too far in, so we're just going to pull those back out, because we kind of just want this to go straight up. Same for the back here. So we'll just pull that back so that goes straight up, because we kind of just want this to scale in on the side. Okay, so that's looking a little bit more accurate. We'll go ahead and hide that just to see. Okay, that's not too bad. I think what I will do though is go ahead and do another lattice. Back to 3 divisions again, and then we're just going to scale this in again. Just so it kind of matches the shape of the outside of the hole here. Again, just pulling these forward so that comes straight up. A lot of this is just making these little tweaks as you go, and like some of this can really be trial and error too. Like especially when you're making something like this. I think I know generally a bit more what to do just because I've made one of these before, and that's kind of why I wanted to do this tutorial as well. And just to give you an idea of like when tackling a complex project like this, kind of the best practices, or at least best practices so far as I know. And you know, this probably looks very, very flat right now when you're looking at like the reference of the front of a ship. Like if we look at ours here, it looks like it has much more of a point to it. So the way that works is this front portion of the ship actually is rounded like this. So that kind of peak you're getting, that's just extra wood that kind of attaches and comes out to form this. They are very round at the front before you add those features. If we go ahead and just smooth preview both of these, you can see we're now kind of starting to get a pretty nice shape. If I press 7, just go into lighting mode, we don't have any lights, but it's good just to see the silhouette, and it's something I like to do sometimes. You can see we're getting that kind of like nice, buoyant, bowl looking type shape, which is exactly what we're after. There's extra bits here, like you can see this extruded bit here. We'll go ahead and add that at a later time. But for the time being, we're just trying to get the shape here correct, or as correct as we possibly can. I think now that we're pretty close, I'm just going to go ahead and just start scaling the edges themselves, rather than using the lattice. These, I'll do the vertices. Just scale them in until they're literally just touching the line of the reference. Okay, so now that we have this matching the shape, mostly we're going to go ahead and add one more division, just so these are nice even quads as well. And to do that, instead of going ahead and doing it ourselves, we're just going to select that entire edge, double left click it, hold down shift, right click, go to bevel. Then we're just going to hold down and reduce the fraction slightly, just like so, until they're kind of more even squares, just about. You may have noticed that occasionally when you bevel, it just messes up the edges a little bit like this. Don't worry if that happens. Just to fix those, we're just going to slide those back along. Just like so. And there we go. Okay, and now we're really starting to get a bit more of the, like a more accurate hole shape. There are other things that we can do as well. We're going to need to make a cut in here because this part actually doesn't, there's a flat bit here. So I think we'll probably just pull this down a bit just so that curve's matching too. Again, we just want to make sure these are always kind of matching the shape, getting your curves right. We'll save you a lot of headache later if these things don't match up. I know the first one I know of, first ship I ever made, the curvature wasn't quite right, and I had to go ahead and lattice it much later when I'd already had a lot of detail, and it was a complete and utter nightmare. But it was something I had to do, otherwise just it wouldn't look right, and it was really bothering me. So definitely get it right at this stage rather than later. Okay, I don't think there's much else we can do with this blocking at this point without adding more divisions. I think there's one last thing we're actually going to do, which is we're just going to pull these back just so this follows that same line as the back of the lower hole. Just even as you can. We probably want to bring these up a little bit, so that's following that curvature still. Okay. Okay, like so. Now what we'll do is we'll come back to our lower portion of the hole, and we're going to go ahead and add in those creases like we said earlier. So we're just going to quickly reselect those edges, hold down shift, right click, go to crease, and just drag that all the way over to the right. Okay? As far as you can, because that will adjust the amount of crease, and we want it to be as high as possible. Just so we can keep that edge sharp. We're going to hold down shift, right click, and go to, in here somewhere, smooth. There we go. Okay, and then for the time being, we're just going to stick with, I think 1 division for now, and we'll just see what that ends up looking like. Then we'll do the same for the top portion of the hole. There's a bit of a disconnect here in the, like this vertex has come away because it's sort of been averaged out, but that's okay, we can fix that afterwards. Okay, actually before we smooth that as well, we're probably going to want to add some creases here, just to make sure that follows the same shape. Just like so. Okay, so that is kind of the blocking for the top and bottom portion of the hull. We're also going to go ahead and just cut out this part here as well. I'm just going to go into the view, the side view here, select those and just delete, because that portion of the hull we actually don't need. And that, looking at it from the front, that's actually going to be, as you can see here, this part of the deck. So we'll be adding that later. And the reason why this front portion here looks so much higher is because you have this extra detail here. And, you know, we try to line it up as best as we can with the blueprints, but they're never going to be 100% accurate, annoyingly. I think I mentioned in the first episode, just because they're user-made. Someone quite rightly pointed out in the comments, actually, that you could, in fact, use curves to follow the lines here and then make sure they lined up in all the views. It's a little tricky because the blueprints don't line up 100%, but if you got it as close as possible, you could then like use curves to loft those surfaces together, which could potentially be more accurate, but I'm just showing you how we would do this as like a polygon geometry kind of method. So now that we have this top portion, we're actually going to go ahead and remove 1/2, just like how we did with the bottom half, because we want to make some edits to this side, and to keep it as even as possible, it makes much more sense just to have 1/2 rather than having to do it twice. Try and keep it even. So you can see the shape of the hole here is actually kind of curving up and away like this, away from the hole, and then straight up. So in order to replicate this, we are going to go ahead and use the Edit Pivot tool again. If we double click on our Translate tool and then go to Edit Pivot and then get it to snap to that particular edge, we can then slide it along this edge and out. And then we're going to just use our edges here, use our vertices to match the shape on the outside. So again, Edit Pivot, just pull that out until that matches. Like so. And we want to be a bit more careful at this stage, now that we're doing this, because we have more topology. And it can be, you know, it will be a much harder to, or not much harder, but it will be a bit more complicated to do this without getting lumps. So we kind of have to really take our time and be careful and really make sure that we're just extruding things along these specific edges. You can see here that we're getting a very, very big, like more rectangle now rather than a quad. That's okay. We can go ahead and fix that afterwards. And just again with this last one. Just make sure that goes in mostly a straight line. Something like that. Okay, and you can see this curve here. What we're going to have is we're going to have a separate piece of geometry that goes straight across here and connects to the bottom portion of the hole. Or also, while we're here, just going to press this button here to enable the wireframe view on shaded. I'm going to hold down V, left click, and then just snap this so that it fits on. Because ideally we want this portion of the hole to connect up. We will be covering it up with some extra pieces later, so it's not the end of the world if it doesn't, but if we can keep it as close as possible to that top portion of the hole, it will just make our lives easier when it comes to adding that extra little detail. Okay, so what we'll then do is we'll go into the multi-cut tool and probably just add an edge in there, just so we have it a little bit more square. I think we'll probably edit the edge flow a bit on some of these, because now that the topology is dense enough, it doesn't have to follow 100%. We just want it to be close enough. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and duplicate this back over, just like how we did before. Press Ctrl D, come over to that scale in X, minus that in 1 as 1, then select the 2, come up to mesh, then combine, then edit mesh, and then merge again. And then you're going to get those empty groups. That's okay. We can just delete those. Okay. So now that is the blocking for the top portion of the hole. So I hope I'm not going too fast, but if you are kind of running into issues, please don't hesitate to let us know. I've seen a few people saying that this is really, really useful, and I'm really glad that it is. But if any of you are running into issues while you're making this, something's not looking quite right, maybe you're just deciding to make a slightly different ship, please feel free to let us know. We will answer every single comment. We'll be happy to take a look at it for you. I think at this stage, probably what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add this back portion of the ship. Now to do that, we're going to press Ctrl D again, like we did to make the top portion of the hole last time. We are going to go ahead and select these 2 sets of edges. And, oh, actually, not these top ones, sorry. Just these bottom ones. Then we're going to go ahead and bridge. Okay, then we're just going to select those specifically. Hold down space, then go to select, and then inverse. Then that's just going to select all the other polygons. And then it will just leave us with these. We're going to go mesh, display, and soften edge just to make that look nice and smooth. And you can see now that's capped off that back portion of the hull as well. So we've really, really made quite a lot of progress so far. This is starting to look a lot more like a ship, kind of just without the deck and the masts and most of the actual ship, to be honest. But like it's definitely starting to take shape now, right? You can see that we have the shape of our ship. You obviously have this really nice detail up here where you have like the back. Is it the stern, I think, of the ship? I think that's what it's called, the technical term. We have these nice windows, and where meeting chambers and like captain quarters and stuff like that are on these old ships. And eventually we'll go in and add all of the portholes and things like that. But for the time being, I think we will probably leave it there. I'm going to quickly go ahead and rename these, because somehow this top portion has got named bottom hull when it should be top hull, and this should be named bottom hull. So I don't know whether I'm just tired and accidentally did that in the beginning, or somehow in combining things the names have changed, but that's okay. We'll name this top hull _002. Let's call this one 001 just because we have 2 different bits now. And we want to keep those separate too, right? Like we could go ahead and make this with each individual plank, which is what I did on my last model, but I wouldn't recommend it. We'd still have to start with the base mesh like this to have the shape to cut out into different bits, but I think we'll probably just add the wood as a texture this time, just because it's a lot easier, and you can honestly still achieve basically the same effect, just making your life a lot easier and a lot less stressful. But yeah, so that is it for today. I'm hoping I have a bit of time over the weekend. I'm hoping to actually make another part of this video where we continue building up the deck, and the plan is with that is to kind of get this back portion blocked in, get the deck blocked in, and also if I just turn the reference back on, get these parts blocked in as well, these higher parts up here, just because once we get that in, this really is just going to look like a ship, kind of just without the masts and all the portholes. But if you followed along to this point so far, we really are making very good progress. I'm very happy with how this model is coming out so far. And there's a little parts that we'll need to iron out, right? Like right now when we're smooth previewing, you can see we've got some gaps. That's okay, don't worry, we'll go ahead and fix all of that. But it's just about little small baby steps, just edging us closer and closer to getting the correct shape and having a model that looks accurate and something that we can be proud of. So I hope you've enjoyed this part of the tutorial. Any questions at all, like I said earlier, please do let us know. And yeah, we'd also love to see your work in progress. If you want to share any of it with us, our email is always in the comment section or in the description. So if you want to send that along or ask for any feedback, we'd be happy to do so. Anything you're stuck with. And yeah, until next time, thank you very much for watching.